talking about how women need to stop blaming their hormones for the reason why they're gaining weight, that it's purely not the case. And it was this whole big thing. But I hear that very common, like often, where we've seen this trend of like, we didn't know much about our hormones at all. We didn't know what was happening. Hey there, Natalie. I am so excited to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I know. I think you and I connected way back when, and then our lives have kind of gone separately, and then yet they've recrossed paths and remerged. So it's fun to be able to kind of see how you've changed and how I've changed and how our businesses have changed over the last couple of years, and just kind of like have this pop in little conversation.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking about that. I can't even tell you how long ago it was. And I was living up north at the time, and now I'm in San Diego. I think that
Are you really?
Yeah.
I did not know that. I live in San Diego.
Yeah, I
Seriously?
moved down here 2 years ago from San Luis Obispo County.
Okay.
And the event we went to, I think it was in Los Angeles. So we met in the middle there. That's
Okay.
too fun.
Yeah, I did not know you were in San Diego. That's so funny because I've actually been like really working on trying to create some more local meetups. And so today was one of them where I was like, I'm going to do like coffee and collaboration. So like basically just like hang out at a coffee shop, co-working, collaboration, like let's just get more people in person. And I had messaged a bunch of people.
Yeah.
Being like, hey, this morning, whatever. And I was like, my only restriction is I have to get back. I have some podcast interviews like later in the afternoon. And so it's funny, but next time I will make sure that you know the date. And then, or we could have just done this podcast in person.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. I didn't think about that. I would love that. I'd love to get together. I was trying to do a monthly wellness walk, like a walk/book club type thing. And yeah, I had a few. I just need to be a little bit more consistent with that. But I'm trying to work on the same thing.
Yeah. Well, same idea. I had told a friend of mine, I was like, I love the coffees. Like I love meeting up and just like doing that. But same, I want to get outside and move and do something. And so I had talked to somebody about doing some hikes and just doing like an entrepreneur meetup hiking event kind of thing, like just doing more things with, I don't know about you, but I find that in entrepreneurship, like it's really hard sometimes to actually have normal conversations with people that are not in entrepreneurship. It just, you think differently, you talk differently, like the way you view the world is a little bit differently. And I was like, I want to have more of those types of relationships in person, not just virtual. Like I've got a ton of virtual ones, but I'm like, who can I go sit at coffee shop or who can I go hiking with or whatever? So yeah, we should definitely do that.
Yes.
So what brought you to San Diego?
So it was for school. I came down here to take some prerequisites, but to go to Bastyr University, and I'm hoping to be there this fall.
Okay.
I have 2 more prerequisites to complete for my naturopathic doctor program. And so that's what brought me here. My daughters were graduating and moving away. And so I knew I was going to go somewhere.
Yeah.
Originally, I was thinking I was going to go back to Santa Barbara, which is where I went to college. But the more I started following this, nudge to go back to school, I was like, oh, look, there's a program in San Diego and let's go, because there's another campus for this school in Washington State. And I knew I wasn't moving to Washington State. So I'm like, San Diego it is.
Well, I've done that. I went to undergrad in Seattle, and then now I'm here in San Diego. When I first moved here, I talked a lot about how there's actually a lot of transplants between Seattle and San Diego. It's a very, I don't know what it is. Like the city itself, they're very similar in a lot of ways. They're both, ocean border cities. Like there's just a lot of similarities between them. And so you see a lot of people crossing between them, but weather is very different between the two of them, and just the climate and like everything. But I think they've changed a lot in the most recent years. I feel like Seattle's not the same, but I think you picked the better one coming down here.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I love it. If it's been 2 years, I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, awesome. I'm so glad that we had that little touch point and we like connected like that. It's so weird. Like I think there are a lot of entrepreneurs in San Diego and I just don't know who they are. We just don't know each other. So we're going to make it happen. We're going to make it happen.
Sure. I definitely have to connect. I've already got some thoughts and ideas about upcoming events that you may be interested in.
Yeah. Let's do it. Cool. Okay. So while we're on that, you came down here for naturopathic school.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me a little bit about that. Because when you and I chatted before, that was not your plan. That's not where you were at. Like, how has life changed? Like, what is the journey that your business and your life has been on?
Yeah, I never thought in a million years I would ever go back to school because school was just not for me in general. I studied dance at UC Santa Barbara. That was, my schooling was moving my body, which has always been moving my body. And I think when you and I met years and years ago, I was a Pilates instructor. I may have opened my own Pilates studio at that point. Around 2015 is when I had a studio. I closed it down and sold it with the pandemic. And at about that same point in time, my mom was battling dementia at a very advanced level, and she had been placed in a memory care facility at the beginning of 2020. And so that whole year of the pandemic was, just incredibly hard. And she passed about a year later. She passed in January 2021. And through her dementia journey, I learned a lot about the body, how the body works, how dementia came about, and how preventative it could have been. She was seeing a functional medicine doctor toward the end, and it was something I'd wished we'd known about sooner.
Yeah.
And so it really sparked a deeper interest in learning more about the body and how our body functions. On top of that, when my daughters went through a major health crisis as well, a hospitalization, and so many things, again, learning about the brain and the body and how we could avoid these things.
Yeah.
And the more I looked into it, the more I was like, women, especially women over 40, are experiencing so many different shifts. Luna wants to say hello. And they're at this point in time, maybe even earlier, at the age of 30, 35, there's so many things that we should know in order to prevent what my mom went through or what other women have experienced at that crucial, crossroads of a period of hormonal shifts and things that have caught up to us since having kids as well, if, we've had children. Anyway, so that's kind of what spurred it all, was for me to go back to school so I can learn more about how to support my clients.
Yeah.
And also for selfish reasons, I didn't want to experience that same thing because it was obviously extremely hard for me, for my 3 daughters, my dad, and I didn't want to put my daughters in that position again to have to, see my decline like they did my mom. My mom was basically like a second mom to them. She helped me raise them. My parents did. And anyway, so that's what started it all.
Yeah.
And I've learned a lot. It's just driving me to do all the things I never thought I would do, like learn science.
Yeah.
Go to chemistry classes, learn physics, organic chemistry. It's been a real brain buster. And as I continue on that process, it just, just kind of proves that point. Like, we really need to take care of ourselves, and we can, so that we can function properly. Like, my brain just stopped functioning again earlier this year during my organic chem class. I'd take a step back and be like, what the F is going on?
Yeah.
And kind of recalibrate.
Totally. And I think like what you even kind of highlighted too is like there's a lot in Western medicine that is not addressing what actually needs to be addressed. As somebody that's in Western medicine, like I'm in there, like I see it,
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a lot we don't know. And when we, particularly around dementia, like I've heard studies of, cultures around the world that do not have dementia, that doesn't exist. Right. And so it's like, what is it we're doing? I think you and I, or someone I had recently talked about this, like the same with menopause or like aging. Like there are factors that in certain cultures around the world, the symptoms and the processes that we go through don't exist. So when we start to see that, we can start questioning, okay, like what is it that we're doing? Or like what is it that we're not doing? Or how is our lifestyle really impacting this? And like, what are these conversations that we really need to start having instead of just accepting dementia happens or cancer happens or, like any of these things. Like I told my grandma, so I got diagnosed with melanoma last year. And because of such a strong family history and like all these things, they did genetic testing. And of all of the, I don't know, it was like 76 cancer genes or whatever that they tested me for, I came back negative for all of them. So I was like, okay, well, if I ever develop cancer in my life, I know it's environmental. Like it's something that I am doing, like because my body's not just necessarily predisposed to it genetically. And so it's like those conversations, like what are we doing that's creating these cancers? What are we doing that's creating the dementia? Or like I said, not doing, either way. So what are some of those things that you feel like really surprised you, I guess, in that journey that you found like we either are doing or we're not doing?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I thought was just wild and so simple was the advanced blood work that we did with my mom and my daughter. And what we discovered with both of those was the foods that cause the inflammation in the body, in their specific bodies, like which specific foods cause inflammation in their body, because it was different for both of us. It's different for everyone, obviously. What are we deficient in as far as micronutrients and electrolytes, etc.? And then feeding your body accordingly and then supplementing accordingly, which seems so basic. But when we can have those advanced labs, then we know, we have a baseline and we know what to do from there. And it did change. It had a dramatic change in my daughter's behavior and her physical behavior. So that to me was just like, what? If we're, this is going to be really simple, but if we're deficient in vitamin D, you're telling me that we could have massive depression? That's ridiculous. If I knew that I was deficient in vitamin D, I would want to, obviously I want to know that so I can know how to prevent it, and as not be my first, my first point of fixing that being like antidepressants. Like I want to know what I can do prior to that. And if it doesn't work, okay, then let's look at what else can I do,
Yeah.
So that was huge. That was a huge light bulb moment for me. And I was like, why isn't this standard? And what I've discovered is like standard labs that we would get from our primary care physician is probably around, I don't know, the 30-ish mark, maybe 20, 30, I want to say. And then with advanced blood work, it's over 100 biomarkers, which was really helpful. And then one of the things we also did with my mom and my daughter, and then I eventually did it myself, were brain scans, QEEG brain scans, to see which part of the brain was overactive and which part of the brain was underactive, and what can we do to support that. Again, it comes down to food, micronutrients, oxygen to the brain, exercise, all of these things can help balance the brain. So if you've got a part of the brain that's overactive, you're going to be very, quick to anger and have outbursts and different behaviors. I can't remember if depression was part of it too, but, and then the opposite is the underactive brain, where it just kind of shows, hard to place words, or, not being focused, ADHD type symptoms, etc.
Well, I remember when I worked at the Children's Hospital, that's what we talked about all the time, was like ADHD. People assume and think that it's like their brain is going crazy, but it's actually the opposite. It's like their brain needs so much more stimulation to get active. And so it's like they need that extra layer of movement or talking or jumping or something to keep the brain paying attention. It's the opposite of what we kind of naturally think. It's so fascinating. So just recently, my daughter we've struggled with acne for the last couple of years, and we've tried a variety of different things. And as part of it's like, I'm willing to support her in whatever way she wants to do it, but it needs to come from her, because I'm, like I've said, nutrition, these different things, like I'm not going to be on here hounding you. I'm not going to make it like, I'm not going to make our relationship miserable because I'm trying to hold you to a standard that you're not willing to participate in.
Right.
So if you want it, this is what we need to do. So it's been a few years that I would probably say since like 6th grade that it's been really something that's bothered her. And so we kind of got to the place where, like, no matter what creams I bought, no matter what stuff, and I'm like, honey, it's coming from the gut. It's coming from the inside. Like, we've got to focus on the inside. But no matter what I suggested, she's like not buying into it, not wanting it, whatever. And so we ended up going to dermatology, and I was like, okay, if this is the route you want to go, if you want to do whatever the dermatologist is recommending, then that's fine. I will support you, even though I don't know that it's the best way to go. Like, but they didn't do any labs. They didn't do any things like that. They put her on 3 months of doxycycline, which is an antibiotic. Like, that's it. Like 3 months of going on an antibiotic and doing some of these different creams. And at the end of the 3, I like did not want to do it, but I was also at the point where I was like, I'm willing to let you test this out and see if this is going to fix it for you. At the end of the 3 months, nothing had really changed. And their recommendation was to keep going, or we could make a few little modifications. And then the next step, which the doctor was actually kind of recommending, was Accutane. And I was like, I don't know that I'm really ready for that. Don't know that I want to go there. But it's fascinating to me, even just like having this conversation of like, why are we not looking? She's been one of those kids that her entire life has always had some sort of a gut issue. When she was a baby, anything I ate could potentially cause her to get bloody diapers like almost immediately. As she progressed, like and got older and was eating solid foods, there were definitely foods that she could or could not eat without getting a diaper rash. And then now, even now, like in the last 5 years, she's had some gut issues with certain foods. And it's been really hard to pinpoint what those foods are. As a feeding therapist, I like when I went to the doctor, I'm like, it's not a texture thing. It's not a sensory thing. Like there's something, she can't eat cake, but she can eat a muffin. So I'm like, what's the difference between a cake and a muffin? Like it's not gluten, it's not the egg, it's not, like all these things. Like they're so similar. And they just it gets written off, right? Like GI ran some labs, GI did something, but like GI's thing was like, oh, it must be anxiety. She must be just struggling with anxiety. And so it's like when you get into these places where you have doctors, like you said, not running all the labs, not doing all the things to really figure out like, what is this?
Yeah.
I'm like, I probably do need to get her to like more of a naturopathic functional. And I did when she was a baby.
Right.
But like, what is it systemically that's causing these issues that both GI, her natural or like our normal just pediatrician doctor and dermatology are not looking at? They're not digging in to figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. The way I see it is like when you mention those two different groups, it's like one piece of the puzzle here, one piece of the puzzle here, and they're both doing what they know, which is, that one particular scope, as opposed to looking at the whole body, which is the whole body is as a system.
Yeah.
Which you kind of have to do. Otherwise, going back to women in their 50s who are experiencing hormone shifts now, and they're like, why can't I sleep? Why am I constipated? Why is my hair falling out? Why is my cholesterol high? All of these heart palpitations, and they're being sent to a cardiologist. They're sent to a rheumatoid doctor. They're being sent to, an endocrinologist, all these different doctors, and getting, part of the picture, just a piece of the puzzle. And that's what I was just like, it just makes so much sense that we have this clear, big picture right here. And we can treat it that way. Yeah. And look at the root cause. And that's just kind of where we're discovering, that the system is broken. Because even going, again, with the perimenopause and menopause, even the OBGYNs and endocrinologists and people you would think that we need to see regarding how to support our hormone health, they didn't get that information in school. They didn't get that training in school. So now they're having to educate themselves and find outside sources. So hopefully, with our daughter's generation or their daughter's generation, the programming will change so that they're more educated. Yeah. And have that information, that we didn't, our mothers didn't, our grandmothers didn't. And that was another piece that really struck me with my mom's health was that she didn't get menopausal care because her doctor didn't know. And she was probably about 48 when she started to go through menopause, is what I'm in hindsight figuring out, which was the year 2002. Which is when my twin daughters were born, and which is also when that big study came out saying that estrogen causes breast cancer. And so then all the doctors and all of the women on estrogen just completely stopped. And now they're finding that that's not necessary. That wasn't the case. The study was done, I don't know, improperly. And so now they're trying to backpedal. But she was put on antidepressants. So when she went to the doctor and she said, I'm not feeling like myself, she was experiencing a shift in her hormones. Her estrogen, progesterone, testosterone were all taking a dive, and nobody knew what to do about it. And now it's being linked, dementia is being linked to a loss of estrogen. And, because as the brain will shrink during the perimenopausal, menopausal time, and we have these sex hormones in our brain, which then causes the brain fog and word loss and all of these memory issues. Yeah. So,
Do you think, I mean, there's this one element of like doctors not catching it, right? And doctors not being aware, doctors not having the education. Nutritionists will say it all the time. Doctors do not get nutrition like education, right? That was even something the dermatologist I brought up. And I said, I've been telling my daughter that we need to approach this from a nutritional standpoint. And the dermatologist is like, well, there's really no data that proves that acne is caused by nutritional stuff. And I'm like, how can you sit there and tell me this? Like, how can you
Yeah.
tell me that nutrition has no impact? Like,
I'm pretty sure there is data and you
she
might want to go looking for it.
it was kind of implying that there's like some data that says like maybe cutting out or like limiting dairy and sugar can have some positive impacts, but she kind of brushed it off. Like it wasn't like significant. And I'm thinking, dude, they're the most inflammatory foods. Like if we get
Right.
those out, like this is all an inflammation system anyway, but that's a whole
Yes.
nother conversation. But like, I feel like doctors just aren't educated. They just, it's to no fault of their own. Just the system itself is not set up for that. It's very much reliant on pharmaceutical, like the funding and everything within the Western medicine is based on pharmaceuticals. Like,
Yeah.
it's really unfortunate. But I think there's also like an under awareness on like us as women too, like not knowing and not recognizing and not having this deeper connection to our bodies and understanding what's actually happening in our bodies. And I think for me in the work I do related to the cycle and like helping women understand their cycle, what I find is like a lot of women just don't know what's happening with their body. Like they don't have that intimate connection of this is where my hormones are at. This is how it impacts the way I feel. This is how it impacts my brain. This is how it impacts all of these things. And so there's some element of this. It's like us really coming home to ourselves and like understanding what's happening for ourselves. And so like, what have you seen and what do you feel like that in that of like helping women? Like, how can we take more responsibility for it in a sense?
Yeah. It's definitely an agency thing. We definitely need to educate ourselves more about what is going on with our body, find support if that's, the case. If you don't know what's happening, find somebody who can guide you through it, which is what I do with my clients currently, as far as like the mentorships, like the information I've gathered through my own health process, through taking care of my mom, my daughter. I just feel like I want to give everybody the information. I'm like, this is what's available. This is what's out there. Find out what works for you. But yes, taking agency over your own body, educating yourself so you have all this information. Would you go into the doctor like you, being like, this is what I've read. This is what I know. Here it is. Can I get this test? Can I do this? Can you recommend this? Because we really do have to advocate for ourselves. Yeah. We know so much more now than we did, than our mothers did, than our grandmothers did. There's so many more tools that allow us to have real-time information. And, it's great that we have all those. They're not necessarily, what's the word? Like, not everyone can get them. Yeah. It's unfortunate that these like extensive blood tests aren't always covered by insurance. Trackers aren't covered by insurance, which is very unfortunate. Hopefully that will change one day. But the good news is that it is out there for those, who can take advantage of it and just have that information in real time so we can see like what's causing my glucose to spike in real time. How is my sleep, each night, and my HRV, and how is that affecting me throughout the day, and creating our own wellness guide basically for how that would best support us. Yeah, it is. It really is about educating ourselves, which puts a lot of work on ourselves. It's not like we just like we used to go in the office and go to the doctor's office and be like, okay, what does the blood work look like, or what does my heart rate look like, or whatever standard test they take when we go in, and they say everything looks normal, and you're like, okay, I'm off. I'll see you next year for our annual exam, But it is unfortunate too when women go in and they're like, I don't feel like myself, and then they get these tests back and they're like, everything's normal, and you're like, how can anything be normal when I just told you, like, I'm not sleeping, my hair's falling out by the handfuls, my heart's racing, I've got this impending doom, I wake up at 3 a.m. all the time and I feel like the world's going to end. Something is totally off. That education is key for sure.
Where do you see, I'm just kind of curious, not necessarily that we have to go super political, but with the state of where things are at right now, and there's been a lot of shifts in like funding and research advancements and women's health, particularly, and different things, like where do you foresee our health system in the next 5-10 years? And what do you think needs to be done differently? Like what I know, like all these things, right? Like we want women to be more like have more advocacy for themselves and to be able to understand what's happening with themselves. And One, I think it's partly doctors having the education, like all these things. Like, where would you like to see things in the next 5 to 10 years, and what needs to happen and what shifts need to happen right now with the way things are?
Slowly but surely, we're going to get more studies done on women, because that's only happened in the last, 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
There is a generation of women who are pissed and armed with information now about menopause and perimenopause and how to support themselves. So we're definitely finding more and more women advocating for themselves. We do have, again, a long way to go. Platforms are being created so that women have easier access for support on how to care for themselves in this stage of life. I can't say a lot, but there's more private funding, or it seems to me anyway that I've seen more about private funding for studies for women coming about, particularly again in the 40 plus range. Brain studies, brain scans, studies done on women during menopause and postmenopause and how the hormones decline changed the brain. Studies on Alzheimer's and dementia are happening more and more. Eventually, the schooling systems will catch up and have more, education on how to support women's health. But I feel like we're getting to the point of looking at individualized care. And it's only for certain people who can access it. Yeah. It's not necessarily where everyone has access to it yet, and it might not happen in our lifetime.
That was going to be my next question, is like, do you ever foresee that being something that everybody has access to?
Probably not in our lifetime, maybe in our daughter's lifetime, maybe in their children's lifetime, because it is going to have to be from the ground up. It's going to have to be education in medical school. It's going to have to go at a government level or insurance level. Something's got to happen in the insurance world. Those two major systems need an overhaul for sure. Whoa.
We got balloons for that.
Wow.
I mean, we're not even on Zoom. I don't know how.
As if somebody agrees.
Yes, it does need, I don't know. You put 2 thumbs up and we got balloons, but apparently, the technology world, and like I said, it's not even on Zoom. Zoom will usually do that. That is kind of weird.
I've never seen that before. That's hilarious.
But apparently the tech space believes that needs to happen as well.
Yes. 2 major system overhauls. I think, in the next 4 to 5 years, it's going to be a little wobbly, and hopefully it'll level out some. I can see what they're trying to do as far as like combine the 2 worlds of the medical world and other options to the medical world and meet in the middle, if that makes sense. There are ways that help people health-wise that haven't been studied yet.
Yeah.
And they're not quite understood. So we need more studies on that before the medical world will see its validation. That makes sense. And I know Dr. Mark Hyman has been doing a lot of conversations, a lot of policy work, trying to really advocate for better foods in schools, better education, and a different way of looking at health and a root cause view of it all.
Yeah. I think it just goes in, it's like such a big conversation, right? Like I said, it doesn't need to be political, because it's like, it's not necessarily a party line. Like, I don't think it's a thing. It's not necessarily a universal healthcare thing. It's not necessarily like a, MAHA thing or whatever it is. It's like really, like you said, it's more of this very foundational, like that every system is integrated in and of itself, right? It's like the question of what are we doing to our foods, and like the whole production of our food and how our foods are ending up at our table. It has to do with the questions of like, what are we allowing in our foods in terms of dyes and pesticides and preservatives and all those types of things. But then it has these questions of like, well, what's in our cleaning products? What's in our laundry products? Like what are we spraying on the plants in our yards? Like, what are we, like all of these factors, like even recently here in San Diego, I don't know if you've seen it. I feel like in between like when you get off the freeway, there's an exit. There used to be, most of them had like some sort of ice plant or some sort of native planting along between like the freeway and the actual exit off ramp, like in that little tiny wedge. And then what I've been watching is that they're like ripping out all those plants and pouring concrete. And I'm like, it makes me cringe every time I see it. One, because I know what it's doing to the planet and just like raising temperatures and things like that there. But even too, just like we need plants, we need trees, we need things in our environment for oxygen and cleanliness and purification and like all these things. So it's like this conversation is such a deep meta layered conversation around like, how do we advance health and how do we like make it so that we're healthy again? Like you said, it's the systems of how we actually access care. And then it's the policies of like all of these other things and all these, I don't know, sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so big.
It's so big and it's so overwhelming. Yeah. It can be when you really like dive deep into it. It is. It's a lot. And the only thing I can think of is like, I just have to keep talking about like what's available for women, for whatever I'm, you know, the population I'm serving anyway is like what's available. How can we best support ourselves to the people who, and because I feel like even, you know, whether we're entrepreneurs, we're mothers, whoever we are, community members, whatever we're trying to accomplish, we have to be at our healthiest. So it's like, let's get the information out to those who to everybody, but whoever can access can grab onto it, take care of themselves. And then it kind of trickles down, if that makes any sense. Anyway, that's how I picture it in my brain. It's like you and I know how to operate and take care of ourselves properly. And that trickles down to our kids. And hopefully that trickles down to their kids and the people around us. And then maybe it just kind of creates this effect of some, you know, in some way.
And I mean, that's kind of how I look at what I do in terms of really helping women understand their bodies and like how they build their businesses. And that's why I've kind of honed in on helping with entrepreneurs, is because I do believe that it's like a grassroots way of changing the system, essentially, of like, how can I help empower women who can build their own businesses that they can then function them and create them from the way that they want to do it versus I had somebody coming to me frequently wanting me to speak in like corporate. And she was like, you'd be such a great speaker for corporate and like helping. And I'm like, that feels like such an uphill battle, like going in and revolutionizing the way corporate America does. And like, you know, just the amount of like feedback I get from people in social media and like how it's lazy and how women want, you know, equal pay, but yet they don't want to work equally. And like all of those type of conversations. Like I know it would be an uphill battle to speak into that in corporate America. But for me, it's like in this grassroots way of working with entrepreneurs, I can help them build up a business and systems that work. And maybe then, like you said, have that same trickle effect. And so I think sometimes it's hard, as I'm one of those people, like I want to see change in the world. I want our food to be different. I want our health to be different. I want, you know, women's health to be different. I don't want women to sit there and have to suffer through menopause and perimenopause, not knowing what's happening. And, you know, I don't want to see my family aging and not knowing and not like feeling like our hands are tied, that we don't have access. And I think that that's a lot of what so many people feel. Like so many people feel like they're like, our hands are tied. There's nothing we can do. And I do think it comes, like you said, from this like grassroots sort of way. And like, how can those of us who can empower ourselves and those of us who can make change, how can we do that and know that it's not just for us, that we're not just doing it for us, but that us doing it and being an advocate for that is helping. Like you think about every time you or I or whoever go to the doctor, and we ask those deeper questions, right? Like sometimes I know I'm one of those people, I'm like guilty of like going to the doctor and listening to what they have to say and being like, okay, whatever. And then going and doing whatever I want to do on the own, you know? And I felt very fortunate with the doctor that I had before. She knew that I was an occupational therapist. She knew that I was very well educated. And so there was a lot of times she's like, I'll write you this prescription. You can choose to fill it, or if you don't want to, don't have to. You know, like she knew very much like, I'm going to give you the medical resources, but you get to decide. You have autonomy over your body and you get to decide what you want to do. And I loved that about her. Like I felt very much like if I need the Western stuff, I've got it. If I don't, whatever. But I think every time we do that, right? Like every time we go to a doctor and we ask those bigger questions, or we ask the why question, or we ask for the labs, or we ask for any of those, for those of us that are willing to do that, it's probably an uphill battle. And very hard.
It definitely is. I've had one particular client friend who went to her doctor and he said something along the lines of, this is how I'm going to treat you. This is how I can help you. If you don't like it, you can go somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And at first, when she was telling me this, I was like, that is crazy and shocking. And at the same time, it's like, well, yeah, he's telling the truth. This is how he knows how to support you.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's not the way you want to be supported. And you came in armed with how you want to be supported, with the receipts of like how it's helpful. And he can't do it for you, which is fine. So we look for someone else. And that's another thing, is like, we feel like we have to see these particular doctors, but we can find someone, we can find another person to support us. You know, we can keep looking. We don't necessarily have to stick with them. We can, you know, essentially fire our doctors and find someone who will work collaboratively, which I think, going back to what you said, where we see medicine, I think that is what women should look for, is someone who can be collaborative with you. And unfortunately, a lot of the situations that these doctors are in, whether they're in hospitals or other than private practice, are limited with the amount of time they can spend with you. And so then it turns into they're less able to collaborate with you because they have some restrictions in that respect too.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know about what your thoughts are, but I feel like every time we ask those bigger questions, we are essentially helping probe the change, right? Like whether it's a doctor who's willing to receive that, or, you know, that's like an act of education in some ways. Like they may take that and go dig in and find a little bit more, or like learn a little bit more themselves. Rather than just being that. And I know, like, I mean, being in the Western medicine space too, like you said, sometimes our hands are tied. Like there are things that even a doctor can say and can't say, and can recommend, can't recommend, based on the facilities that they're in too, right? So like for me, my hands are tied in some areas for things that I can recommend and things that I can't, or tools that I can use and tools that I can't, based on the facility it's and their policies and procedures and stuff too. So there's so many layers to actually getting that support.
It's true. It's true. Yeah. And the other good part, the other good news about that are things like, well, podcasts like this, and podcasts in general. And some of the ones that I think have quite a big audience as far as science goes and educating people are things like, or people like Andrew Huberman with his Huberman Lab, who really dives deep into the latest papers and studies. Dr. Peter Attia is another one with his podcast called The Drive. I loved his book called Outlive. I don't know if you've read
I haven't
that
heard
one.
it.
But, you know, we have, like, again, we have so much more education, so much more access to information to be able to go in and advocate for ourselves. It's tough because it's like there's some optimism, and then again, there's still that, but still we have such a ways to go.
So, I mean, we've talked a lot today around like things that people could do and ways that we could take that ownership and autonomy. But what do you feel like is one of the biggest things that women walking away from this episode today should be thinking of or should be doing?
Yeah. Well, it is, if you're not feeling well, this is what I've noticed lately, is if you're not feeling well, if you're not feeling like yourself, it's just start to track your symptoms. What's feeling off, like whether it's your sleep or your mood or your, you know, hot flashes, whatever it is, start writing all of these things down, the frequency and the intensity of it. And if they haven't already gone in to see a doctor, make sure they're armed with this information, because that will be helpful to them. And also because then when the doctor says, well, everything looks fine, and you know, basically you can say, no, it's not. So that would be one thing I would recommend. And just to see if they can take a broader look at things, try to find the root cause, whether that's going to find a functional medicine doctor or a naturopathic doctor or a mentor that has this information, guide you and say, you know, try this test or read this book or here's the plan to follow that will optimize all systems in the body to help you, because it's all connected. You know, you have to look at so much, not just your hormones, but your nutrition and your metabolic health. And I always joke lately with people that it's like, it's another job to take care of your body as a 40-plus-year-old woman.
Yeah. Well, okay. So, and then that just brought up, like, recently I've been seeing these posts and comments about, well, one, I get them, but I also have seen them on a couple of like fitness stuff of probably like naive men, angry men posting and saying that like all women are just blaming everything on their hormones. And whether it's their mood, whether they're angry, whether it's that they can't lose weight. Like I've seen, there was actually a video that was very big, like I think it went viral, around a fitness instructor basically talking, or personal trainer or whatever, talking about how women need to stop blaming their hormones for the reason why they're gaining weight, that it's purely not the case. And it was this whole big thing. But I hear that very common, like often, where we've seen this trend of like, we didn't know much about our hormones at all. We didn't know what was happening. And now there's so much talk about the hormones that now I think that's getting this backlash of, well, now everything's being blamed on the hormones. Where do you see that like middle ground of like, I'm sure not everything is purely the result of just the hormones, right? There is some nutrition, there is some exercise, there's some sleep, there's some other pieces to it, but hormones are also a part of that, right?
It's a huge part of it for sure.
Where do we draw that line of like understanding the hormones and supporting the hormones, and then also realizing there's like other things that are actually impacting the hormones that do require us to be consistent and diligent and disciplined and like all those other pieces too?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I mean, hormones are a huge part of it for sure. I mean, again, they affect every system in the body because we have, estrogen receptors all over the place. And yes, it's more than the hormones too. So in perimenopause, if you're experiencing perimenopause, there's no blood test. They said there's no blood test that will tell you you're in perimenopause. You have to go based on your symptoms. Mm-hmm. And one way we know we're in menopause is when we haven't had a period for 12 consistent months. But you can't also say if someone wants to take hormone replacement therapy, you can't just put someone on estrogen and progesterone and expect everything to be great, because you do then again, like you said, need to look at your metabolic health. You need to look at your muscle mass that connected to your metabolic health, your nutrition, your food intake, your sleep habits, your exercise habits. Like there are a million, probably 5 to 10 things we need to look at in order to function optimally.
Yeah.
And again, like I said, hormones are a big part of it, but not the only piece. But still, that guy's comment is maddening.
It is. And that's where I think I saw it kind of going viral with a bunch of hormone menopausal type of experts talking about like it's a lack of awareness, and it fuels this feeling for women that they're not enough, that they're not doing enough, they're not good enough, that it's something that they're doing. And I think it is easy to look at hormones and be like, oh, it's not working because of my hormones. Mm-hmm. That may not always be the case. Like so I think that was maybe where he was going on it, but it really came off really negatively and not okay. And so I think it's just that, like going back to that sense of like really understanding ourselves and being really self-aware. Yeah. Of like, what is it? Like, is it that I haven't been consistent with my workouts and eating well and sleeping well and hydrating well, and still my hormones are not working, like functioning well? Or am I doing a really poor job supporting my hormones and supporting my body? And that's why things are not going the way they are. And so
yeah. And it changes because 2 years ago, when I started to take a deep dive into my health after my mom passed, I, did the big deep dive in my blood work. I started to change my diet, supplementing accordingly. I was exercising already, but continued to do that. And I felt so much better. My brain was clear. I lost some weight. I reversed my biological age. All of these things happened once all those pieces were put into place. It was like they just clicked. Then a couple years later at 47, 48, things shifted again and hormones started to decline. And when I did my blood work, I had high cholesterol. All of my cholesterol was super high. My liver was showing out of range. What else was happening? There was something else in my blood work. Everything was just like looked chaotic compared to what it was 2 years ago. And I could feel it in my body too. My brain was foggy. All of these things were happening. And I was like, this is wild, because I optimized my health. I was feeling great. I was doing all the right things. And, it's a continuous adjustment for sure. So then I had to, recalibrate, which we just have to do. And it could be hormones, it could be food, it could be inflammation, whatever.
Yeah.
So many things to look at.
Yeah. And like what I hear, I mean, like, I think it's really important too, is like, it's an individualized thing. Yeah. And it's one of those things that your body is going to be so different than somebody else's body, and what's working for somebody else may not work for you. And like, even we talked about, like, I know I've shared before, but like spinach causes a lot of inflammation in my body. And normally spinach would be one of those foods that's really great for people, And so it really is that bio individual approach to really understanding each and every single body.
Yeah.
in that current state and time, in like what's
Totally.
actually happening in your life. Yeah.
Yeah, mine was egg whites. I was surprised that
Mm,
the egg whites caused a lot of inflammation in my body, and I had to
interesting.
cut those out after eating them,
Yeah.
consistently, quite a bit. But yeah, things will change, and you just have to readjust,
Yeah.
create a new plan.
I was going to say with you, did you find that out through like a food sensitivity test or some? Okay. Because
Yes.
the other thing I know when I had a huge allergy issue a couple of years ago. And when I went to, went to rheumatology, went to
Oh my God.
allergy, all the
Yeah.
things, right? One of the things the allergist had told me at that point in time, because I had done it on my own, I had done a food sensitivity test separately, was he had said that those tests are just so limited too in what they're actually testing that he had actually recommended not steering clear of the foods that actually flagged on that for me. He said that actually by staying away from them, I could develop a true allergy to them.
Interesting.
So he said that, maybe limit them, but
Yeah.
not necessarily like mine. I'm like garlic. Oh,
Right.
golly. I love garlic, and garlic is in like absolutely every, like so much of my food. Like he's like, yeah, I would not get rid of it. So it was interesting. And it could be, like you said, like that Western medicine versus understanding of it. But he was talking about like the IgG, I think it's IgG testing or whatever. I don't, you'd probably know better than I, but like that he had said that it's more indicative of like these are foods that you actually eat frequently and your body's responding to them. That if you actually get rid of them, it could create an actual true allergy.
That's interesting. I hadn't heard that before. Once I did the test, what I did was I eliminated a lot of the standard foods that cause inflammation, like, gluten, dairy,
Yeah.
sugar, alcohol. And I did a gradual elimination over a 6-month period to
Okay.
reduce inflammation. And it wasn't all at once. It was like every month or 2 months, just eliminate a few things. And then after that, then I would add in few things and test it to see how I felt afterward. And one of them being egg whites, and it didn't sit well with my stomach at all.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, I'll still have them here and there, and then I realize, nope, that's not gonna
Yeah.
work. So that's curious. That's interesting. I wouldn't know if that was the cause or if that was the case or not, whether it,
Yeah.
developed an allergy or if it was just showing me now that once my body had calmed down,
It
and
reacted
wasn't
to it.
so inflamed that I could actually feel the reaction,
Mm-hmm.
which I thought was very interesting too. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
interesting. The test I did was through my functional medicine doctor, and I've then done another test through an online portal that I didn't feel was as in depth. Like it was a little bit more generalized. So I kind of took that one with a grain of salt and kind of went with the one that I did with my functional medicine doctor. I know people that have said, don't take these tests too seriously. I think it depends on who you talk to and who you see.
Yeah. And I think even then it's like that awareness, right? Like if like you, I think listening to your body is the biggest indicator, like the biggest thing that we want to be listening to. Like for me, I don't know that any of the tests I've ever flagged said spinach is disruptive to my body, but I can feel it. Like I
Right.
can physically feel it. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that we want to pay attention to, but
Yeah.
it's like you said, sometimes we don't know what it's actually happening and telling us because we have so many other things going on, and doing a big elimination diet like that is hard for people.
It
It's
is.
hard.
It is
Yeah.
very hard. And I was, determined and dead set on doing it. So I think that for me, I was like, I'm doing this, going balls to the wall. I did it around the holidays, which my doctor was like, you can put it off if you want. I'm like, why would I put off feeling better? So, I went fully into it. And again, that's why like I support my clients in this process, because it is, you kind of want someone to support you with this and guide you and hold your hand and encourage you. But one of the things I remember him saying too is he's like, I can't eat onions. I get narcoleptic when I eat onions. It just knocks me out. And I just thought that was so wild and so interesting. So it's all individual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, this was so good. I think like we could probably just keep talking forever. I feel like, yeah, there's so much here. I think I'm very passionate about seeing changes in our health and like helping people really understand what's unique for them and their own body. And I think both you and I both, like, a foundational premise of what we do is like learn to listen to your body, like listen to yourself. And it's not what most of society is teaching us. Most of society is teaching us to eat a certain way, sleep a certain way, to eat a certain way. Like even recently, like a doctor was put me on like the keto diet and whatever. And I was like, at first it felt okay. But like you said, I watched like my HRV tank, like all these other factors, just like, this is not setting well for my body. Like, I
Yeah.
don't like this, you know? And so I think it really is one of those things, like really understanding your body and learning to listen to your body and using that as the clue and the guiding post as we go. Do you feel like there's anything else that you would want people to walk away with or leave with?
No, I think that's a really good one, is just
Yeah.
listening to your body, having just and advocating for yourself and knowing like your body is always talking to you. That's another one that I tell my clients, with the current work I do and the work I did with my Pilates studio and my clients. Listen to your body because it's always telling you something,
Yeah.
even an ache, a continuous ache is telling you something, whether you need to strengthen something or eliminate something, inflammation or whatever. It's a clue.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just because it's common, because we're 35, 40, 45, doesn't mean it's normal. And it's not something that you have to live with, whether it's incontinence or brain fog or, the midday slumps. There's a reason this is happening, and it's not because you're getting old. So those are the main things I try to get across to people. It's like you said, just listening to your body and then finding some support. Someone's going to listen to you and give you the steps and the tools to support that.
Totally. Well, if people want to get in touch with you and follow up with you, where can they find you? Where do you like hanging out?
I am always on Instagram. You can find me at Natalie Says WTF. My website is also that, nataliesayeswtf.com. And yeah, those are the two main places you can find me. You can send me messages if you need resources. I have a free resource on the website called Age in Reverse, which basically breaks down the steps I took and the steps I walk my clients through on feeling better and all the ways our body talks to us, which I think is great information too, that you can arm yourself with if you need, tools to take in with your doctor with questions and stuff.
For sure. For sure. I think that's the biggest thing is people need to know, what do I need to ask my doctor? Because that's what most people don't know. Like most of us are just hoping that our doctor is going to guide us in the right direction. And it really is about educating ourselves to be able to go to the doctor, to be able to be a better advocate.
Yeah. Yes,
for
definitely.
Sure.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you
Well,
so
we'll
much for
definitely make
having
sure,
me.
we'll make sure to have all those links linked up in the show notes for you so that everybody can access them there. And thanks so much for hopping on.
Thank you.